Most people still think AI is something you open up in a separate tab. Maybe it's ChatGPT or Claude, you paste in the context, you ask for help, you copy the answer, and you bring it back into Slack, Notion, GitHub, or wherever the real work is happening. But Claude Tag is fundamentally different, and it's going to change the way that we interact with AI forever. Because this is not just Claude inside of Slack. That drastically undersells what is actually changing. With Claude Tag, you bring Claude directly into the team conversation. You tag it, you give it a task, and now the work happens in the open. So the team can watch it, correct it, steer it, and even pick up where it left off. So instead of one person privately asking an AI assistant for help, now the whole team works together to manage this AI teammate. And this is the big fundamental shift. So if you think about it, legal could tag Claude in a context channel. Engineering can tag Claude in a code-based thread. Product can correct the requirements in real time, and sales can jump in and explain what a customer actually needs. The best part is that Claude is not just responding once and disappearing. It actually holds context. So it can use the tools the organization gives it and then follow up when work is finished or when a thread stalls. This matters a lot because the future is not everyone sitting alone with their own chatbots. The future is actually teams working together, managing shared agents with context, permissions, memory, and accountability. So in this video, I'm going to break down what Claude Tag actually is, why it matters, and why this is the clearest sign yet that AI is moving from private assistant to an actual operating system that teams manage together. With that said, let's get into it. There was a lot of rumors and people talking about how we were going to see a one-person billion-dollar business. And at the time, even 2 years ago, this seemed crazy. But now that we're seeing how humans are going to interact with AI amongst themselves and with teams, it's becoming clear how smaller and smaller teams are going to be able to accomplish more and more productivity. So really getting into what actually is Claude Tag and how does it work? So put simply, it is a way that you bring in Slack, which is your communication channel, the members of your team, and Claude all together in one. And we'll talk about what that actually looks like. But it's really as simple as tagging Claude into your conversations, wherever that conversation is leading and wherever it may be going. Literally as simple as in Slack, you type in Claude and Teams. I'm assuming they'll have this integration as well, and you just drop it in there. And so basically, a person or Claude has access to tools. It has code bases, it has docs, it has, there's a million different tools that you can give Claude access to. And this also gives it context, and it holds that context over what everyone is talking about. So why does this matter? Well, the old way that we would work, the old way meaning circa 2023 to now, would basically be, let me go into ChatGPT, let me go into Claude, let me explain the context, let me copy the output, let me paste it back. A lot of friction there, obviously better than the old way before AI, but now it's really as simple as tag Claude. The context is already in the conversation. It's been following it, so it holds the context, and action happens directly in that thread. And so really at its core, what's happening is we're going from a simple productivity tool to a participant in the workflow. So it used to be this outside, almost third party that could give you feedback and advice, but now it is directly integrated into the work that we're actually doing. And this is a great example of what that looks like. So Lydia tags Claude. Claude, can you take the triage for the next few hours? And it says on it, good look at the shoot, you're on in 15, because once again, it has all of the context that is necessary depending on what's going on in that conversation. So this is a big step change in the way that we work and how it's going to change forever. So with Anthropic's launch example, they basically have a sales signal that a customer is waiting for exports on. The team thread is basically trying to decide how to move forward with this and what changes to make, but Claude follows the thread and actually finds the code. I'm going to show you the example in a second. But they open a pull request, open the change, and it made it. So we have the sales rep saying, hey, all of my deals are blocked because of this feature. And essentially what happens is the team is discussing it, and then boom, the PR is made and the changes are made. So the point is not code generation, but it's code generation with team context. And you can see this beautifully here. So Nadia saying backend half's there, never got wired up. Claude, can you build scheduled exports? There's a stub in services/exports design, and it says on it, scheduled exports will have per usual toggle in-account settings. Anyone who turns it on gets their export ran nightly, reuses the existing job, 150 lines. And then Nadia says, actually, wait a minute, hold up. Not per user. We want workspace level. Admin set it for everyone. That's a different surface. And it says replanning. So workspace settings, admin panel only. And you can see how, I mean, you're literally going back and forth with Claude and working through whatever it is that you're working on. So this is a huge unlock because we're talking about multiplayer AI. You know, if you think about video games, it's really fun to play by yourself, but it's even more fun to play with your friends, whether they're with you in person or in the cloud. Well, now we're going from single player AI, private chat, private context, private output, and now we're doing multiplayer AI. So everyone is working alongside of Claude, and we truly have a robust team here. Another cool thing is that Claude builds memory from the channel. And so it not only is it holding context, but it's building memory. And so with engineering, over time, it's learning more. Sorry, I messed up my little diagram here. But it is learning more, and it's holding that memory. And it also has different assets. So it has decisions, priorities, documents, patterns, etc. And so there's much less re-explaining and less prompting to do, which is one of the most annoying things about AI. You go into a chat, you have to give it completely new context. You have to tell it everything all over again, even if you talked about it yesterday, because the context and memories on these systems is just not great. But as you can see, it holds that much better. So Drew, also at Sam said, Harlow specifically asked for every Monday, not just on and off. They want to pick the cadence. Nadia says, cadence picker. Let's do at least daily, weekly, choose which day / monthly. Then Claude jumps in and says, noted, cadence picker added, blah, 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 blah. And it's basically adding A and B, any preference. And then Nadia says, always B. It will hold that memory and it will carry that forward. And so now it will always remember that B is the preferred option when they're discussing this. But something else that's really interesting is it doesn't just work across messages. It works across tools. Now, this was already possible with Claude Code, but now that it's directly inputted into your team and the conversations they're having and the work sessions going back and forth, including, by the way, team calls that are going to be recorded and transcribed. So work is happening across tools. So we have work happening in Slack, Codebase, Docs, marketing, support, but Claude is the central figure for all of this. And so it reduces the handoff gap that you would normally need between engineering, marketing, sales, and support. I mean, this is truly a way that we're going to see these siloed parts of the organization break apart, and they're going to be much more interconnected because they don't really have to speak a different language anymore. Sales can directly talk about a feature they need, and Claude can implement it as long as an engineer is overviewing it. For instance, in the legal channel, someone can ask Claude to help with contracts, but in the engineering channel, someone can ask Claude to help with the code base. And there's a million different examples of this. In the sales channel, it could help with some of the sales documents. And we'll see more and more of this capability get announced by Anthropic over the coming months. But the point is, we are now working across tools and not just messages with AI. The permission model is something that you're probably aware of if you already use Claude Code, but basically you have Claude as the central figure. But enterprise AI works well when permissions are enforced, not merely requested. And so engineering channel, maybe with the code repo, it's allowed. Docs, it's allowed. Claude has the policy gate, the team, the channel, and the tools. Legal contracts, allowed. Legal code repo, blocked. The point is, this is just an illustration to show you can basically set the permissions so that Claude never has too much access to something or not enough access to something. You can decide, do you want it to read? Do you want it to read and write? Do you want it to have access to this repo? Should it not have access to that repo? And so you have full customized ability to decide where you want Claude to work and what you want it to actually have access to and what you want it to get its hands on. So Claude has its own account. You know, it's basically ability to audit log who did what, when, and where. You have humans and Claude both in the loop for systems, pull requests, documents, tickets, whatever it is that your business is working with on the inside. And it all is logged in the audit log. So once again, this is how humans and Claude are working together as a part of one unified workforce, no longer splitting the work and going into separate chats that have zero context with the work being done. But where this is going is much bigger than Slack. So Slack is the starting point, right? But we're seeing Claude and Codex and all these tools be more and more integrated into things like GitHub, Jira, Drive, Notion. Notion's making a huge push for this AI stuff. Salesforce has announced they're going headless. Email is obviously heavily connected. I suspect soon we will have this on our text messages and pretty much everywhere. So Claude or Codex, your tool of choice, joins the workspace. You give it permissions. It has memory. It continues to build memory. It takes actions and it reports back. So this is your AI teammate. And it is going to work on every single aspect of the business and every single asset of the business. And this is a big why, not to go on a tangent, but this is a big reason why I am very bullish on AI creating jobs, not taking away jobs. Because think about the productivity that we are going to see once AI is integrated into all these enterprises and all these different verticals. I mean, the productivity is going to be something like we've never seen before. So while it might be concerning at first to say, wait a minute, you're telling me that Claude can handle the legal contracts and it can edit the code base? Well, what am I going to do with my job? Well, you're going to be focused on higher leverage opportunities and tasks and doing work that you enjoy more. So I'm a big believer that AI is going to stimulate the economy and create jobs over time. But what does this mean for business? Well, where should AI sit inside the workflow? As we just discussed, it should sit for sales, for example, it can answer product questions. For support, it can investigate tickets. For marketing, it can update product launch docs. For engineering, it can open PRs and edit code bases. You place AI where decisions, context, and action meet. So you need those three criteria. And if decisions, context, and action all meet, that is your Goldilocks zone for where AI should be inside of your business. But there's always risk, right? And you got to think about the risk before you install this because it could be risky and not good for your business. So who can add Claude to channels? Which tools can it write to? How are bad instructions stopped? How are cost and quality monitored? How is memory reviewed, corrected, or deleted? So basically the winners are not just going to turn on Claude and just let it rip. They're going to have a team or at least a person that is deciding for each aspect of the business, how should Claude actually be plugged in? How should it actually work? How should it function and how should it flow? This person or this team will decide the operating rules. And so each business is basically going to have an AI operating officer, if you will. So last but not least, my take here is that the old workflow, we go into ChatGPT, we explain a task, we copy the output, huge behavior shift. We tag AI, it's inside the system, it's where the work already happens, and AI is moving from chat to operations. So AI is truly becoming a teammate, a part of the team. No longer is it some third-party tool that we're using. It is a part of our business, our team, and our organization. And this is a huge step change in the way that humans work with AI and will continue to work with AI. So I've already been testing this with some of my team, and it's pretty incredible. You know, we already had it pretty integrated, but to be able to just tag Claude and have it work with us and roll through with us is, like I said, it's a step change. So I'm curious if you're using this in your job, in your business, even in your regular life. If you have questions about Claude Tag, if you have questions about anything AI related, just drop it in the comments. I try to make content for people that might not be engineers. And even if you are, you're welcome here too. But ultimately, Claude Tag is a big change. Really appreciate it. If you'd like and subscribe, I got a lot of good content coming up regarding AI and education. So stay tuned and I'll see you guys in the next one.